Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission for November 20th, 2012. We'll move on to land use actions for discussion and possible action. First item on the agenda is Central Oklahoma United Methodist Retirement Facility Incorporated, a map amendment PZ.12.1693, requesting review and approval to rezone property 10.826 acres more or less and addressed as 711 Peaceable Acres Road from A agricultural to RTM residential two-family and multifamily district. Mr. Coots.
Thank you. Hello, Tom Coots, Development Services. As you said, this is a request to rezone a portion of the property. It's approximately 11 acres of a total 55 acres that we'll be talking about today. This is the back 11 acres in the east portion of the Peaceable Acres plat. It is surrounded by, to the north, unincorporated Payne County, to the east, RSS, small lot, single family, to the south, public, which is the golf course, and to the west, RTM, which is residential, two-family and multifamily, which is also owned by the applicant. It's an air photo of the property, so you can see it's currently this area is wooded pretty much just in its natural state. Findings include that the subject property is adjacent to other property with the RTM residential two-family and multifamily designation. This once again is the properties to the west and also property to the north, which was sent forward with an RTM zoning recommendation to the City Council. And also I guess I got these switched. The proposed development scale and uses are consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan says that the area is appropriate for medium density residential, which would be between 4 and 12 units per acre. The RTM district allows for up to 20 units per acre, but their proposed plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later on tonight, is consistent with the scale and uses that are recommended in the comprehensive plan. And as I said, the subject property is adjacent to other properties with the RTM and residential two-family and multifamily designation. And with that, do you have any questions for me?
Have any questions for staff at this point? Thank you, Tom. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would who wishes to speak in favor of this map amendment?
Just for the record.
Please come up. Your name and address too, please.
My name is Brian Kuhn with Hewitt Zollers. I'm an engineer with the firm out of Oklahoma City. Again, like Tom said, we'll be getting into the SUP next, so we can kind of give you our presentation on the project at that point if you'd rather, and get past this unless you have any questions right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tinker. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this map amendment? Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the map amendment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives, please.
Okay. We can accept the staff findings and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed map amendment as presented. We can find that additional information and or discussion is needed prior to making a recommendation, and so either continue the consideration to a certain date or table the consideration until that information is available. Or we can find that the map amendment is not an appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts to the surrounding vicinity and recommend that the City Council deny the map amendment.
Thank you, Tom. Discussion, Commissioners? Or Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to accept staff findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed map amendment as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please place your votes when it lights up. There we go.
Do we need to hit Joe's?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Okay, that is approved with 6 yes votes and I guess Commissioner Merrifield is absent tonight, so that is approved. Next item on the agenda, Central Oklahoma United Methodist Retirement Facility Incorporated specific use permit, PZ.12.1694, requesting review and approval of a use permit to allow single-family and healthcare and social assistance on property addressed at 711 Peaceable Acres Road and zoned RTM, residential two-family and multifamily, district. Tom?
All right, thank you, Tom Coots, Development Services. Once again, this is the entire 55-acre development. Now the northern 15 acres was recommended to be zoned RTM. That'll be going to City Council. This area that's zoned agricultural, we just recommended it to be zoned RTM, and that'll be going to City Council at the next meeting. And so when all this goes to City Council, the whole property will be recommended to be RTM, and so this specific use permit is for the whole property. Once again, this is a total of 55 acres, and to the north of the development is unincorporated Payne County. To the east is RSS, residential, small lot, single family. To the south is public, which is the golf course, and to the west is unincorporated Payne County. See from the air photo and also the site plan, they are proposing to have an entrance off of Washington Street. They're also proposing to have their emergency route, and this site plan's a little bit, they've changed it around a little bit, but the emergency route basically will go through the golf course. That's what's proposed at this time. They've met with the golf course, and on that, they're proposing one big main building and then a kind of smaller main building, and 67 single-family houses throughout the development. They're proposing to phase the development into two phases. The multifamily would be 170 units, and that's their independent living facilities. And then they'd have skilled nursing care and assisted living, which would be 108 beds. And anyway, I've got the site plan, like I said, laid out on the air photo so we can see where everything lays out with the surrounding vicinity. Staff findings include the proposed single-family uses are allowed with a specific use permit in the RTM district. So again, I've got my things out of order. Sorry. The applicant has applied for a map amendment and annexation to bring the entire property under the RTM zoning. That's what I mentioned, that we just did some earlier today, and then at the last Planning Commission meeting, we had the annexation. The proposed single-family uses are allowed with a specific use permit in the RTM district. And the proposed healthcare and social services are allowed with a specific use permit in the RTM district with the proposed text amendment that we'll be talking about later on tonight. And a final drainage study has been submitted. Do you have any questions for me?
I did have a question, Tom, concerning the emergency access road. I think you made mention that you talked with the folks at the golf course. Is that going to be something that's going to be able to be worked out? I know it's pivotal in accessing the property.
It's necessary for the development. It's not really necessary for our discussion with the specific use permit, but to develop the property, they need to have this second access wherever it may be. We've gone through a number of alternatives, and the one that we've landed on right now is the route through the golf course. What they're planning on doing is through the golf course, it'd be a grass paver system, similar to the Oak Creek community. If you've been out there, they've got a fire lane that's just grass is all you see, but it can support a fire truck. So that's kind of what they're thinking about going through the golf course. You wouldn't really be able to tell that it's there. And it would only be for an emergency in which the main entrance was blocked for some reason, and there was still an emergency back in the development.
Right. I guess the only other concern I had, and again, I may be a little premature with this, was, and I noticed in your report that there would be a traffic study required when the development comes through. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that'll be a requirement because of the number of units they're proposing. Traffic study will be necessary.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this specific use permit? And again, please state your name and address for me.
Good afternoon. My name is John Harned, and I'm the president and CEO of Epworth Villa in Oklahoma City, as well as the president and CEO of The Ranch here in Stillwater. My address is at 14901 North Pennsylvania Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, which is Epworth Villa. You take the P off of president, and I'm a resident. So very pleased to be here this evening. Just brief remarks. If we could go to the slide that shows the overlay. Yes, please. Thank you. As you approach off of North Washington Street or Highway 177, you'll come through the trees, and the first building that you see that's the modified Georgian, kind of that U shape, is your independent living apartments. So it's a 4-story building, and those apartments are 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, 4 stories with underground parking. We start all our decisions with the safety of our elders in mind. That underground parking doubles as a storm shelter for that portion of the community. We also believe in successful aging, and that is nurturing the mind, the body, and the spirit. So the central building, which you see behind that modified Georgian or U-shaped building, moving over towards the east, that's in the middle of that hub of the community, it's kind of a modified H, is the clubhouse. It is a single-story building. It contains 2 restaurants. It contains a pub. It contains a chapel, a fitness center, an aquatic center. It also includes a physician office and a rehab for inpatient and outpatient rehab. There's also hobby zones in that area, as well as classrooms. We hope to be the site for Osher, Lifelong Learning Institute, at the ranch. So nurturing the mind with learning, the body with the physician, the rehab and the fitness center, and the spirit with all of the classrooms, but also the opportunities for socialization with the restaurants and the pub. Behind that, the northeast portion of the main complex is a 2-story assisted living building, which contains 48 assisted living apartments, not just rooms or beds, but full apartments, with studio 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments built in a household model of care. There will not be nurses' stations. There will not be large med carts rumbling down the halls. You walk in this household model of care. You'll be in the foyer of a home with a formal living, a formal dining adjacent to that, an eat-in kitchen. French doors block your view to the residents' apartments. The rooms open up, and there's more of a living space or a den that the apartments surround. As you move towards the bottom, kind of the southeast corner of that main complex, is a 3-story building. The first floor is memory care. And what we have found through our research with our university studies with our elders that have dementia or Alzheimer's disease is that you begin to get an agitation or a pacing and then a combative behavior if they're unable to go outside freely. Because at this point in the disease progression, they're unable to articulate that they'd like to go outside. So with landscaping and a high fence, we create a meandering path that wanders away from the building that then brings them back safely. Again, safety in mind. For-profit institutions many times put memory care on the top floor for the safety of the elders, but then they begin to get the behaviors and the agitation that goes with a side effect of the environment with the disease. The next floor, the second floor, is Medicare rehab. It's 20 beds. We've consulted with Stillwater Medical Center. They're very excited about the potential of a nonprofit Medicare rehab facility in Stillwater. Their average length of stay at Stillwater Medical Center exceeds the national average because they cannot find a place reasonable to discharge those elders to for Medicare rehab. The top floor is long-term care. All 3 floors of this building will be built in that household model of care. You'll walk in, you'll be in the foyer of a home. You will not have nurses' stations. You will not have med carts rumbling down the halls. And we staff, because we're a nonprofit, 50% higher than the state average in our industry. and we will also operate our facilities with the universal workers. So all the employees at a minimum will be certified nurses assistants. And whenever you approach someone, instead of them saying, "I'm sorry, I can't help you, I'm in housekeeping," they can help you because they clean the room for the resident, they know their behaviors, they know their wants and their desires. So we truly believe we're changing the face of aging in Oklahoma and leading the way in aging services. There is the potential for an expansion. In independent living, you'll see an L-shaped building on the far southeast corner, kind of inside that loop road. That is the potential in a future phase for a 4-story independent living apartments with underground parking. So that's a future expansion. We've found already that about 22% of the people on our wait list of 190 come from outside of Payne County, the primary market area. We expect that number may continue to grow with our affiliation and endorsement with the OSU Alumni Association. In the back of the property, you'll see those 67 cottages. The first phase only calls for the 6 that are on the west side of the property, kind of outside that loop road, right hugged up against the trees, and then 13 of the cottages that are closest in where that red property line, or at least where the annexation line is currently. So 13 there, 6 at the front. So that is phase 1. And the project, we will pre-sell those apartments and independent living apartments and those cottages. So that's my formal remarks, other than I'd like to say we are a nonprofit organization, and if our elders should run out of money, no fault of their own, we offer them a home for life, and we do not ask them to go on Medicaid. So they don't have to come asking for money to go buy a soda or anything like that. The only people in our organization who know if an elder is on benevolence is myself and the Chief Financial Officer. Our employees do not know, and the other residents in the community do not know. Our goal is to give back any remainder of our profits back to our elders at this campus, our employees, and the greater community, as we are a 501c3 organization, and we recognize our charitable status is to give back to the community as well. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
I have one. What are your age requirements or limitations or anything like that? Can you let us know that, Mr. Arnold?
Certainly. Age requirements for a 501c3 continuing care retirement community are set by the Internal Revenue Service, and those are 62 or better. And that's the age that you can enter our community and reside there. There is an exception if you're the president and CEO. You can be a little bit younger than that. So.
Understood. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions?
I just had one quick question. What's your time frame, do you think?
Fabulous question. Time frame on the project will be the pre-sales. We will begin taking 10% deposits. I'm a former partner in a top 10 accounting firm, and I'm very risk adverse. So I like to build process into this project so that we mitigate risk. So we will take 10% deposits. So if an apartment costs $150,000, we'll take $15,000 starting in January. We need about 90 to 100 of the apartments or cottages to be pre-sold. So out of 140, we need 90 to 100 to be pre-sold at that 10%. What we can then do with that is go to the banks and say, we're pre-sold, we've mitigated your risk as a lender, and then construction begins. We believe in building the whole campus, the whole continuum of care, so that it will all open together. What I've experienced in my career in senior services is that there will be people waiting for this project, couples in particular, and one of them may fall ill during this 2-year time that they're waiting. So when we do open, I want them to be able to both move in together, whether it's to independent living or maybe one of them needs a higher level of care, maybe memory care, but they can move to the campus together and both be close. So the construction timeline is 18 months. So if we were to start next fall, that would have us opening in about first or second quarter of 2015.
you. Any other questions for Mr. Harmon? Thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Sure.
If I may add one more thing for the record, again, Brian Kuhn with Kuhn Engineering. We had a meeting the other night with the surrounding homeowners. It wasn't required of the PUD, it's required with zoning, it's not, but we thought it would be a good idea just to get them in a room and have dialogue with them, and we've done that. One of the things that we agreed to, and they were asking how we can get this on the record, and I said I'll say it from the podium and in front of you also, it will be on record, is along the perimeter, and if I may, I brought a pointer, but pointers I just found out don't work on flat screens, so that won't help much. There's an existing resident here, and also Mr. Teet's house is right here. We have agreed that we'll put in a solid fence here and here. Here, we'll do it as we develop these, but here at the beginning of the project, and we told the neighbors that we would do that, and I just wanted to commit to you on the record that we will do that at the time of this first phase. It's along the south line of the Guthrie's property and partially on their east line, where we can. There's a pipeline that goes through there, and the pipeline company probably won't allow a fence, but we'll put that fence in at the time of development, so I'm making that commitment. And at the entrance, we do know we have to do a traffic study also, but we are at least committing at this point, we're going to do a decel lane for anybody that's going north to turn into our property so they can get off the road to slow down and turn in. So we're going to do that at a minimum, whether the traffic study requires it or not. So, thank you.
Good neighbor, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this specific use permit? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition of this specific use permit? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives, please.
Okay. We can accept staff findings and recommend that the City Council approve the specific use permit for the conventional single-family dwellings and the healthcare and social assistance. We can find that additional information and or discussion is needed prior to making recommendations, so either continue the consideration to a certain date or table the consideration until the additional information is available, or find that the specific use permit is not an appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts to the surrounding vicinity, and recommend that the City Council deny the specific use permit.
Tom, I do have one question.
Okay.
Will this project come back before us, or will this be a use by right if upon approval of tonight's
The goal,
council approval?
the goal and the whole point of doing these map amendments and the specific use permit was so that they would get their land uses out of the way and done, and it would be from that point, if this is all approved, it would be a use by right. So it would just submit for their commercial use by right, which is the building permit application, when they're ready to start the project.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to ask that question and get it answered. Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Tom. Discussion, comments? I'd like to say, again, I think we've said this several times with your organization that on behalf of Stillwater, welcome to Stillwater. I think what you're trying to do is great, not only for our seniors, but for our community as a whole. And again, I know it's a huge investment, and love where you're going with it. I think it's a perfect fit. So just wanted to let that comment be out there for the record. Welcome.
I'd like to reiterate that same thing. You guys have been very conscientious on your efforts to come to Stillwater and very conscientious on your plan and development. So I'm excited about that. And with that, I would move that we accept staff's findings, recommend the City Council approve this specific use permit for conventional single-family dwellings, healthcare, and social assistance.
Second.
A motion and a second. Please place your votes.
Push the abstain.
There we go. Yes, that is approved.
Joe's
with,
always a little.
Chairman Lane, will you make a note that I voted on the record for this amendment? It did not show up
Oh, did it
on
not?
the board, and it did not show up the first time either. But if you would just make a note that I voted yes on both of,
On both of those? Okay.
appreciate it.
Duly noted. Thank you. That is approved. Thank you all very much. Okay, moving on to plans, policies, ordinances for discussion and possible action. We have a proposed text amendment to Chapter 20.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
don't mean to interrupt you, but pardon the interruption. I need to go ahead and ask to recuse myself from this. I have a personal conflict of interest in portions that you're going to be discussing.
Sure, Commissioner Teague, no problem.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, we're moving on to the text amendment to Chapter 23 Land Development Code by amending Section 23.97, General Structures and Uses Within Residential Districts, Section 23.139 RTM, Residential Two-Family and Multifamily District, and Section 23.140 RMI, Residential Multifamily Intermediate District.
Okay, Tom Coots, Development Services. As you said, we're going to talk about two things today, two potential text amendments to the Chapter 23. First one, it has to do with RV, boat, and trailer storage on a person's private property. And second will be the health and social assistance as a specific use permit in certain residential districts. But I want to start by talking about the RV, boat, and trailer storage. I'll start by, this is what the current code says, 23.97 Section A and 6. The storage of boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles incidental to the residential use is permitted, provided that the parking area is located inside a garage or outside, and then I've highlighted and bolded, in a side or rear yard on a hard surfaced or graveled area that is not counted as required off-street parking and is not located in the public right-of-way or in a sight triangle. And I highlighted that area because that is the area that's causing us to take some pause on this particular requirement. Got an area, just a random part of the city. The blue is houses. Got an air photo there, and then I've got the property lines really bolded in the side property lines, and the yellow is the side yard. So what that code says is that if you've got let's just say a boat. If you've got a boat, you can park it in the rear yard behind your house, basically. You can park it in your garage, or you can park it in your side yard. Well, what is a side yard? A side yard, by definition, is that part of your yard that is measured from the point of your house closest to your side property line. And so if your house is located 20 feet from your side property line, you've got 20 feet of side yard. If your house is located 2 feet from your side property line, you've got 2 feet of side yard. So what that's saying is a lot of houses in the RSS district in particular, the side property line requirement is a minimum of 5 feet. And with most subdivisions that are houses that are built today, they build it pretty much as close as they can. And so you've only got now 5 feet of side property line. Well, 5 feet, the problem is, even if a person does what they can do and widens their driveway to accommodate the parking of a boat or RV or trailer, they still can't fit it in that 5 feet, assuming they pave that entire area, which you probably want to leave a little bit of room between you and your neighbor. And so we've run across a lot of people who don't meet the code by the strict definition, but yet they're parking it in an area that's really not harming the intent of the code. And so, once again, this is what the code says right now, and the area that's bolded is in a side or rear yard. And so this is what's proposed. The storage or parking, just to clarify that, what's the difference between storage and parking, just to clarify it's both of them. And just take out the in a side or rear yard. So what it'll be is you can park it in a garage, in your rear yard, or outside on a hard surfaced or gravel area. So basically, and that's not counted as your off-street parking, so you can't just take up your whole driveway and then have to park your cars out in the street. But so basically, if somebody has the space in front of their house, not in the right-of-way, not in a sight triangle, they could go ahead and have their RV or boat or trailer parking right there. So that's that section. We might want to pause right now because that's the section on the parking, and maybe talk about it right now, and then we'll pick up the other part later.
Actually, Mr. Norman, can we separate these two?
Yes, in fact, you should.
I think we probably should too, so, okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir, please.
In the current code, if I'm building a driveway, does that driveway have to be a hard surface or can be gravel?
Building a driveway, well, it can be gravel. There is a provision that allows for an alternative surface. It's a special designed pervious gravel surface that allows for drainage to run through it. You can do gravel or pavers. You can probably even do grass pavers, similar to what we were talking about with Epworth Villas and their drive.
My concern, or what's in my thought process, is I've got a driveway that's asphalt or concrete. This allows a 10-foot wide gravel place right next to this to park your RV. And to me, the look of that is not what I desire in the city, to have a bunch of these across the city. I think that if it's a hard surface driveway, that the surface that you're adding to it ought to be a similar surface. Have you thought about that? Has the staff thought about that?
Yes, what we propose though is we wanted to go back. One of the findings you'll see is that this was allowed in the pre-2008 land use code. So we wanted to basically roll back to what was allowed previously. And so that's what we brought before you. I'm sure we won't have heartburn about making that sort of change.
I've got a question. Since you brought up the previous 2008, was it still required, or was it, I guess, restricted that you couldn't park in the right-of-way in 2008 as well? Or was that something that came in the 2008 edition? Because I guess my thought is, if you look at most of the houses, you know, the right-of-way line is about 12 feet from the back of the curb, and a lot of the houses are 21 feet from you know, the right-of-way line, or they have a building setback line that's 21 feet or so from there. You're not going to park a very big motorhome or a boat if you're going to stay out of the right-of-way line and be in front of your house. I mean, I can't even think of a motorhome that small. But so I was just curious if before 2008 it was allowed in the right-of-way or not.
I don't know for sure. I'm getting a no. Okay. That was not in there. Or no, it was not allowed, or...
There was no change to that portion of the code.
Okay, that was in the pre-2008.
Because David asked the exact same question I was getting ready to. You can't, if you're starting your driveway, you have to go up to that front property setback, don't you, before you can expand. You can't just come straight out 40 feet or whatever on that front property. You have to go up.
Paula Dennison, Development Services. It's not the property setback, it's the property line where it transitions from public, i.e. the street or right-of-way, to the private property. That's where the driveways can be widened out in excess of what Stillwater City Code maximum allows. And that's where what David was referring to is the parking is not to overhang. Any vehicle is not to overhang into the public right-of-way or overhang the sidewalk, which are typically right along the edge of that public-private transition invisible line through there. Does that answer your question?
Judge, what's the reinforcement on that? I mean, who...
Ticket?
Is that monitored? I mean, is traffic
yes.
monitor that consistently, and they kind of know where that setback's
yes.
going to be, and, or that right away?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any other questions?
So, well, yeah. Sorry. So
that's okay.
So there, by doing this, I think maybe you just answered my question, but I want to restate it. They're not, with this, allowed to make their driveway any wider than the lot width or whatever the requirements are now. They can't make their curb cut any wider than just because they own a motorhome. The widening has to occur between their house and the right-of-way line.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, except in Westwood neighborhood. That's the only place in the city of Stillwater where there are actual more restrictive provisions for parking in the front yard, the material utilized in the front yard, and that type thing. The rest of the city, you are still limited to from the travel lane up to the right-of-way line, property line, meet the city's restrictions, the width, turning out radiuses, everything else. Then you can widen out your driveway and utilize whatever materials are available and approved by code.
I guess here's another question. So is there any limit to how wide they make? I mean, could they put, you know, in between the right-of-way line and their house, could they pave the whole thing?
If they would like, if any property owner would like to spend that amount of money to pave their whole front yard, there's no restriction to it.
Only anywhere except for Westwood?
Except Westwood, yes. I will caution there are stormwater considerations and there are other environmental impacts and.
Right.
Is there a permit they have to apply for, or just they can go out tomorrow if this is approved? And
not tomorrow, after the ordinance passes.
after it will pass.
There's not a permit on private property. The only permit we require is from the through lane of the street up to that right-of-way or property line. Outside of that, they could go out there, and if they're utilizing the permeable paver or permeable alternative, there are specs in the standards that the city of Stillwater has adopted, and those must be followed. And what we do is we request that they have it designed, bring to us, and we verify that it does meet the standards. Because we don't want anybody putting anything down and going to that expense when it doesn't meet the standards that the city has adopted, and then might have to tear it back out and do something else.
But if they wanted to build if they wanted to add 10 foot onto their concrete drive and make it gravel, they can do that.
If this passes, yes, the gravel that is referenced in what is provided to you in the report, that is still a designed gravel. It's not just coming out there with a dump truck and backing it up and dumping it and spreading it. It's not that. It is a designed component
But they could do
to
that
again meet
right
the
now.
standards.
They could do that right now, whether this passes or not. They just couldn't park their RV there.
They could do it right now in their side or rear, as is indicated in the current code. But the problem that we have run into is there is a number of boats, trailers, RVs, ski-doos, whatever, that are being parked right beside the driveway in the front yard. That's the biggest problem. Whereas right now, like Tom alluded to earlier, 5 feet between your driveway and your property line is not enough space. So that's what the code enforcement through the police department is seeing more of, is that the front yard is the catch right now as to what's creating the majority of the issues that are seen around the city. So this would resolve that. It would completely take out the additional language of front or side or rear. It would just have the outside, but here's the requirements.
But a point the commissioner just made is, today, under the current code, if I owned a single-family home with a concrete drive, I could fill in my entire front yard with gravel and park my car on that.
Yes, you could. Park your car, not your RV,
Not
or
my
your
RV,
boat,
but my
or your
car.
trailer, or
Your ski doo.
or your bicycle.
Ski-Doo. I don't have a ski-doo, so.
Because they don't exist.
Any other questions for staff at this point? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Paul. I think we'll go ahead and do the public hearing separately on these, if that's okay. Is that acceptable? Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on this this portion of this text amendment. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition of this portion of the text amendment? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and ask for alternatives on this portion.
Okay. I want to point out we did receive a written email on this one in support of what you have before you. Also, I had one finding on this one. The parking and storage was allowed in the pre-2008 Land Development Code. So our findings would be that the proposed text amendment is needed, and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendment as presented, or find that the proposed text amendment is needed and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendment with identified changes.
Questions for Mr. Coots? Okay, thank you, Tom. Discussion, commissioners.
After listening to the discussion, I have no problem with what is proposed.
Is that a motion, sir?
I move that we follow staff recommendation and send this to the city council with no changes.
Do I have a second on this portion of the text amendment?
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll wait for that to light up. And please place your votes. And, if y'all would hit, Becky and Joe's there. There we go. Okay, that portion of the text amendment does pass with 5 votes, 1 abstention, and 1 absentee. Okay, now to move to the second part, Mr. Coots.
Do we need to find Becky, or did she go home?
Yeah, if you don't mind yelling at her, that'd be great. Thank you.
She went to get gravel for her RV.
The truck was already at her house.
All right, she's
Welcome back.
Sorry, we interrupted you from shoveling your gravel.
Paul scared me. I was back there eating.
All right.
Okay, on to the second part of this, our text amendments. It's section 23, chapter 23, section 139B, and section 140B. These are the RTM residential 2-family and multifamily districts, and the residential multifamily intermediate district. The proposal is to add into the uses allowed with a specific use permit the healthcare and social assistance. We just heard earlier tonight Epworth Villas applied for a specific use permit, and one of the things in their specific use permit was to allow healthcare and social assistance. Staff had been thinking about adding this to the code prior to this, but their application spurred the need to get it through rather quickly. And so the findings include healthcare and social assistance was previously allowed in the RM residential multifamily district. It was removed from the multifamily districts when we created all those new zoning districts. And healthcare and social assistance, I guess, is allowed in the O office district and the CS commercial shopping districts. And so we're proposing to allow them in the RTM multifamily and the RMI multifamily intermediate district as a specific use, very similar to the way it was, but just in those particular zoning districts, because those are if you allowed it in the high-rise district, for example, the density would be just very high for an assisted living care facility. That just doesn't seem pretty right. So these are the lower density multifamily districts. And so do you have any questions for me?
I have one that's a little bit off the beaten path, and I don't mean to hit your coal with this, but use by right, I know it's in our, it's O, office, and what was the other one?
It's a use by right in the office and the CS commercial
CS.
shopping district.
Why isn't it a use by right in CG? Does anybody know? I've ran across that a couple of times, and I just...
Frankly, it's more of a residential use. It's a little bit of a stretch to allow it in the CS use. I wouldn't see going the other way.
I thought it was kind of strange that in our code we allow it in an office and see commercial shopping, but we don't allow it in commercial general.
Yeah.
And so I might ask you, Tom, just for my curiosity, to research that if you get a chance
Okay.
and let us know. I just thought it was strange that it wasn't allowed. And I've ran across it several times in the last year or so.
People wanted to do that, or?
Yes, and we're unable to because it was a CG zoning. So anyway, I'd just like to know the reason why.
Yeah,
Anyway, kind of off subject a little bit, but I
Yeah.
appreciate your patience. So any other questions for Tom?
I think it's natural.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this part of the last part of the text amendment? Anyone in favor? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this second part of the text amendment? Anyone in opposition? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's finding or staff's alternatives on this part.
Okay. We can find that the proposed text amendment is needed and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendment as presented. Or we can find that the proposed text amendment is needed and recommend that City Council approve the proposed text amendment with identified changes.
Thank you. Discussion, Commissioner? Chair would entertain a motion.
I move that we send forward this with no changes to the city commission for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please wait for it to light up and we'll place our votes, please. And that is approved with 6 yes votes and again, Commissioner Merrifield absent.
And Josh got to vote.
I did.
Yeah, he did. That's great. You're now
Job done.
somebody.
Every vote counts. Thank you.
All right. Next item, approval of meeting summary and discussion and possible action. Approval of minutes for the November 6, 2012 meeting. Are any changes, deletions, additions, Commissioners?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion a second to approve the November 6, 2012 minutes. And those minutes are approved. Miscellaneous items from staff for discussion and possible action. Our next planning commission meeting will be December 4th, 2012. And I'd just like to add that hope everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving coming up here in a few days.
Remember your spandex, smile.
Understand. All right. With that, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second to adjourn. Please place your votes. And we stand adjourned.